Hi, and welcome to Physiology, the study of maintaining the status quo, aka your homeostasis. So basically, we're always trying to, if we have a set point, like here, this point on the balancing, that we're always trying to stay balanced. Okay, balanced as far as like what's going on inside of our bodies. So what sort of conditions must remain constant in your bodies? Well, you have temperature. Okay, you're always trying to maintain roughly the same body temperature, which is, for most individuals, it's 98.7. Okay, even though some people might run a little hot, some people might run a little cooler than that. Whatever your set temperature is, you're always trying to maintain that set temperature. Then we have our blood sugar. Okay, remember, we want to be on the nice, baby sugar roller coaster. We don't want to be up on the monster one when we're spiking. Okay, we want to be nice and calm with our blood sugar. Also, our oxygen and our CO2 levels. Okay, we always have to maintain a number for that. Our water. Okay, so making sure that we're hydrated. When we drink too much water, then we urinate more. When we're not drinking enough water, then we get, we need to get those feelings of being thirsty. Our sodium and our potassium balance. So remember back when we talked about active transport and the sodium-potassium pump? Well, here's that feeds in here that we need to keep our sodium and our potassium levels at a set number. So let's think of blood sugar. So lunch. And like we know, even though this might be tasty, it's not going to put you on the right sugar roller coaster, right? Okay. So what happens to your blood sugar after you eat a meal? It goes up, right? Okay. So let's look at blood sugar. Again, we're talking about the glucose that's being carried in your red blood cells. So obviously it has to be high enough so that it can diffuse into the body cells, okay, because it's using passive transport to get inside. So it has to be high. It has to be higher than what's actually inside the cells, right? But it has to be low enough inside your blood so that you're not losing excess, okay? So you're not peeing it out. So what happens after we eat a meal? Well, if you eat that McDonald's meal, then your sugar is going to spike high, right? Okay. We want our sugar to increase. Okay. After a meal, your sugar is going to increase. Hopefully, you're eating a meal that's low on the glycemic index with lots of fiber in it, and not that McDonald's meal. So what's going to happen when your blood sugar increases? Well, if you're eating low glycemic index to be on the nice roller coaster, then what's going to happen is your pancreas, again, releases insulin, which is going to lower the sugar, content because it's going to convert it to glycogen. Then when your body starts using up your glucose and needs you to release glucose from glycogen, then the pancreas will release glucagon, and that will go ahead and release release glucose back when it breaks up glycogen. Okay, so you want the insulin and the glucagon to be working in concert with each other. But if your blood sugar spikes by eating, like that McDonald's meal, then you're going to produce too much insulin, and then your blood sugar is going to crash because glucagon can't do its job. So we want that nice roller coaster. So what about fat? Where does fat come in here? Okay. Well, if you're eating food that's low in the glycemic index, right, and your glycogen stores in this would actually be if you're eating foods high on the glycemic index, okay, so like that McDonald's meal, fast food, yucky food, then what's going to happen is you're going to have so much glycogen stored that your body's not using, that your body's going to say, hey, let's convert that to fat, right? Okay. And your glucose is going to get low, so you're going to get hungry, and you're going to eat more. But if you're eating foods low on the glycemic index, then your body will release glucose from glycogen, and you won't get those starving feelings. So, and then eventually, with foods low on the glycemic index, you'll break down fat to replenish the glycogen. Now, sometimes this can cause what's called the athlete's bonk or crash. So if you've ever seen a marathon runner or somebody doing like an Ironman, and they basically run out of fuel, okay? So they like collapse. They can't finish the race because they just can't keep going. That's because they're performance athletes, right? So high-performing athletes. And if they don't carb load enough when they're getting ready for a race, because they don't have a lot of fat on their body for their to prevent this crash, okay? So aerobic training helps build your glycogen stores. So that's why all athletes, they have to do conditioning, right? They have to do conditioning, which is all aerobic training. When I coached palm squads and we were getting ready for competitions, oh, they hated doing the conditioning because they didn't like to do the aerobic stuff. Anyway, but we didn't want them, you know, when they're out there going full out in their 2-minute routine, we didn't want them, you know, losing energy and not being able to, you know, finish their routine. Okay, body temperature. All right, so again, we are set about 98 degrees, 37 degrees centigrade, okay? So how do we maintain this temperature? So what do you do when you get too cold, okay? So when you get too cold, and you know, let's say that you go out at night and you forgot your sweater, okay, and it's getting too cold. So what do you start doing? You start shivering, right? Like, you know, you start shivering. So if you're too cold, your body's going to start shivering, okay? And that's because that's going to cause their involuntary muscle contractions. You're shivering. That's because your body is doing this with your muscles, contracting them to create some friction, which is heat, okay? All right, and it's going to redirect the blood from all your extremities, okay, from the extremities to keep the core warm. They want to keep the core warm because that's where all the vital organs are. That's why frostbite doesn't happen here. Where does frostbite happen if someone gets too cold? At the extremities, tips of the toes, tips of the fingers, nose, ears, okay? That's where frostbite kicks in because your body has redirected all that blood to keep the core going. And you're also going to burn more fat, okay, for heat. What about goosebumps? When you get cold, you get those goosebumps, okay? Well, mammals, we're mammals, right? We have hair. We get what are called pileoerections, which cause the hair to stand on end. So why does this happen? Well, in our evolutionary past, okay, when we got cold, okay, we had a lot more hair in our bodies, we would fluff it out, okay, making us warmer by providing better insulation. So when you need to cool off, you don't want to trap air in your hairs, so you don't make those goosebumps. But you can see here, you have them stand on up, okay, when you get cold. So this is an involuntary reflux. It doesn't really do a whole lot for us now because we're a lot less hairy. So we would call this, if we go in terms of evolution, a vestigial structure, okay? All right, so when you look at mammals, okay, or, you know, check out a bird, okay, and so when it's hot, okay, you see that female cardinal there. How do I know it's a female? Because it's not red, right? Okay, so when it's warm, she has her feathers, you know, all primmed and smoothed down. But when it's cold, what does she do? Okay, she poofs them out. Because again, that is like us getting goosebumps. It's going to trap the air, insulating, giving her insulation to keep her warmer. So here's this female cardinal. Really, I'm not fat, I'm just cold. Thought that was cute. Okay, how about this black-capped chickadee? Okay, so here it is. What time of year is it? I would say that's probably summer. And when it's cold, okay, so she fluffs out to keep everything nice and insulated. So think about, like, I know I haven't, so it's November 2016, we just had rain, and it's finally getting cooler outside. I don't put on my air, but I've opened up my windows, and so what does my cat do? My cat, like, sits there, stares at me, and all fluffed out, like, come on, turn on the air, because she's trying to keep warm, right? Or you look at your dogs, and when it's cold, they curl up, but they also fluff their hair out. Or think about if you change out your bedspread to your winter comforter, one like a down comforter. Again, that's creating insulation because of all the feathers in there to trap that air. So temperature regulation, okay, so think about a thermostat. So what does our body do if we're too warm? Okay, so if we're too warm, obviously here in Arizona, we know what we do when it gets hot. We sweat, right? Okay, so, you know, like this here, picture here, it's kind of getting old. I'm going to have to find a picture of a new politician sweating. Anyway, so we do the opposite of when we are cold. So instead of trying to keep all the blood to the core, we're going to direct it out to the extremities to carry that heat out. So we'll redirect blood to the surface of the skin and to the extremities. We're also going to slow down our metabolism, okay? Slow down our metabolism. So all of this make up components of what we call a feedback system. So in a feedback system, you need a sensor, something that's going to sense or measure the state of the system. So in this case, the state of the system is going to be our body temperature. So we need something to constantly be sensing our temperature. Then we have to have somebody that can make sense of these readings. So we need an integrator, okay? So think of your brain. It gets the information that the sensor sends it, and it processes it and determines what action, if there's an action, needs to happen. And then you need the effector, okay? So the brain will send out instructions to the effector, whatever body system that needs to go into action to maintain your body temperature. So it's instructed by the integrator to affect the state of the system. So in the case, most of our sensors are our nerves, and then obviously our integrator is our brain, and the effector is what system of the body. So if we're talking about if we're cold, then the brain is going to send out to the effector. It's going to send out to the circular system to redirect blood flow. It's going to send out to the muscles to go ahead and start shivering, okay? So the components of the feedback system, you have we have the system, the state of the system that we want to maintain. We have to have a sensor, okay? The sensor is always measuring the state of the system and sending those measurements to the integrator, right? The integrator processes the information and sends out instructions to the action crew, the effectors, which will then affect the state of the system, okay? So sensor, integrator, effector, state of the system. Now, most of our body systems work on what we call a negative feedback loop. A negative feedback loop is corrective, okay, corrective. So in this example here, we're talking about blood sugar, okay, blood sugar. And again, we want our blood sugar to be at, a nice point, maybe just gently going up and down. We don't want it to do with this, okay? So when it starts to go up, then the body, the sensor senses it, sends it to the brain, and the brain says, hey, go ahead and start releasing some insulin. So the liver does that, and the blood sugar starts to drop. If it drops below the set point, and then the sensor says, hey brain, here's what the blood sugar is, and the brain says, oh, that's too low, and sends out to the effector to release glucagon, which is then going to correct the blood sugar, okay? So negative feedbacks are corrective. What goes up must come down. What goes down must come up, back to the set point. So body temperature and blood sugar. Okay, those are two examples, again, of maintaining constant conditions. So again, they're going to use negative feedback loops to correct the system. So if something's going up, you reverse it to bring it back down. If it's going down, you reverse it to bring it back up. And you're always trying to bring the system back to the set point. You don't want the state of the system to change. It very rarely will act badly unless, you're having some sort of issue with something. Now, the opposite of negative feedback is positive feedback. Positive feedback is not corrective. So in positive feedback, what goes up keeps going up, or what goes down keeps going down. So it is not counteractive, but it amplifies them. If something goes up, you amplify it, it keeps going up. Okay, and this is going to lead to a change in the system. So positive feedback, you want the system to change. Okay, you want it to change to something, some other, not at the set point. Negative feedback is corrective to maintain the set point. Again, so the positive feedback is going to push the system to a new point away from the set point. Not very many things in our bodies run on positive feedback, but for one example, childbirth. Okay, so we're talking about the actual process of getting the baby out of the uterus. Okay, so again, the uterus is full, and we need to have a change in the state of the system, and the change needs to be empty that uterus out. Okay, so what happens? Some little contractions start, and the nervous system sends to the brain. The brain says, "Oh, yeah, we need to get this baby out." That's a change in the system. So what do we need to do? We need to amplify those contractions. Okay, so it sends out a message to the to release more oxytocin, and poof, then the baby comes out. Okay, so childbirth. Okay. Another example of positive feedback would be exponential growth. Okay, so this is human population growth here. Since records have started to be kept about recording the human population, and you can see that it keeps going up, 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 up. It's still increasing. Okay, so right now, human population growth is an example of positive feedback. Okay. Another example of positive feedback is species extinction, okay, a species going extinct. So here is a pigeon. Now, that's kind of a pretty little pigeon, but we don't see those types of pigeons anymore because they're extinct. It's called the passenger pigeon. It went extinct, okay? It went extinct in 1914. So, why did it go extinct? Well, they were pretty tasty, and people liked to hunt them. Okay, so they would hunt them because they were eating them for dinner. And so here you can see, you know, all these passenger pigeons that were hunted. And basically what happens is passenger pigeons, their mating behavior, they only like to reproduce when there's large numbers, okay, when there's large numbers. So when it's mating season, then all the passenger pigeon population comes together into one area, and then they select a mate, okay? If the numbers start dwindling, then they stop picking mates, okay? So as the hunters were killing off, okay, hunting and killing off the passenger pigeons, then fewer and fewer of them were able to get together, and so then they were mating less frequency, therefore replenishing their numbers not as high. More hunting, less mating. More hunting, less mating, till eventually there was no other passenger pigeons for the to mate with, and they stopped, so they stopped replenishing their numbers and they went extinct. So again, that's positive feedback. That's an example, species extinction. Okay, so here is a practice problem. So you have the ocotillo is a desert plant that grows leaves just after it rains. Okay, so most of the time when you're driving around or all over campus, you see these ocotillo plants, and most of the time they look dead if they're not on a watering drip system. So a natural one that's not hooked up to a drip system, what happens after it rains, you see that they green up and all these leaves shoot out. Okay, so they do that, they photosynthesize a lot, and then but their leaves are not waxy, so they lose a lot of water from them. So after the water levels start to get too low, then the ocotillo plant does what? Boop, drops all its leaves. So let's focus on the water conservation mechanism of the plant. Is an example of negative or positive feedback when we're talking about water conservation. So first off, ask yourself, is this corrective? Okay, is it corrective? So they want the water level, the plant wants the water level to be a certain way. Okay, So when it rains and the water level goes up, it photosynthesizes and it starts losing water via the leaves. So then what's it do? The water level starts to drop, okay? So it drops its leaves so that it doesn't lose any more water. So that would be corrective, which is negative feedback. Okay, so what was the effector? So remember that the effector is the action. So it's not the sensor and it's not the brain, so it's the action. And in this case, which one would it be? Okay, I say E, both B and D, because it's the mechanism that holds the leaves that are already there and the mechanism by which new leaves are sent out. Okay. All right, so here's 3 examples. Identify them as positive or negative feedback. A female becomes a female athlete, okay, like a marathon runner. She becomes amenorrheic, which means that her menstrual cycle has when her body is deprived of food. So would that, stopping your menstrual cycle or a menstrual cycle, would that be an example of positive or negative feedback in terms of energy stores? Now, it requires a lot of energy to be fertile, okay, and have a menstrual cycle. So this would be an example of negative feedback, corrective. A runner breathes more heavily when exercising. Focus on the oxygen content of the blood. So right now I'm breathing, right? But if I start running, okay, what's going to happen to my oxygen levels? I'm exercising, so my oxygen levels are going to go down, right? So I start breathing more heavily. So is that corrective? Yes, because you breathe more heavily to bring more oxygen in because you're depleting your oxygen by running. So this would be negative feedback. Last one, lower employment causes increased labor costs, which raises the price on goods, which causes inflation, which causes wages to increase more, which leads to increased inflation. So when we talk about the economic status, okay, of our society, if there's unemployment, which increases labor costs, which raises the price of goods, causing inflation, which causes wages to increase more, which leads to increased inflation, is that going to help bring the economy up or bring the economy down? Okay, so all of these are going to increase the decrease of the economy, so that would be an example of positive feedback. Okay, so remember, negative feedback is corrective. Okay, if it goes up, you got to do something to bring it down. If it goes down, you got to do something to bring it back up. Okay, that's negative feedback. But positive feedback is we want something to keep going in the direction that it is changing. Okay, so it's an amplification. All right, have a good one.